Hey everybody, so in this video I brought my two good friends back on the channel, Mr. Vash Sky and Mr. Disney Family Man 23. We're going to talk about this new Webslingers Upcharge toy that Disney just announced the other day. Vash, welcome back, buddy.
Happy to be back. I'm so excited to get into the topic. This is a very fascinating discussion. Didn't expect this, but glad to be here. Glad to be talking about it.
Yeah, it is. Very, very interesting stuff. Mr. Family Man, welcome aboard, sir.
As always, thank you for having me on, and I can't wait to actually talk about this myself, because after the news, broke out, I was like, yeah, I have some thoughts on this myself. So
Cool. All right, well, let's dive right in. So Disney announced, for those of you that are not aware at home, Disney announced these like toys that that basically give you like extra abilities on the new Spider-Man Web Slingers attraction for Avengers Campus. One of them is Spider-Man related, and the other toy I believe is more of an Iron Man related toy. It's let me see here. I'll give you the exact pricing. I got it right here. The actual band will cost you about $34.99, and then each additional add-on will cost you $29.99 each. So it's pretty expensive. Mr. Vash Sky, what are your overall thoughts on this upcharge?
So it looks like you're going to have 4 different flavors. You're going to have a multi-fire Spider-Man, which we'll get into, Ghost Spider, like shock webs, and then 2 repulsor blasts by both Rescue and Iron Man. So I think that's what they're going for right there. Look, listen, this is kind of going into the monetization of the parks. When consumer products and parks and resorts merged, this was kind of where they were going. It was going to be a much closer relationship between the two. The kind of the products that you build support the theme parks that you build, and they kind of have a little bit of a closer relationship than they ever had before. And this is the kind of the evolution of that idea. I think it's really this is a really interesting one. This is really fascinating, George. I'll kind of hold back my thoughts. What do you have to say?
Well, for me, because I work in sales, so this is nothing more than like if you were to have a promotional sales pitch to someone, and it's like you show them this product and you give them every reason why to buy this product. And this is the way that Disney's going with it. Why not, put this product around a brand new attraction of a brand new land that was supposed to open a year ago, that people are already anticipating on going on this ride and seeing what it's all about. Because fans are going to now compare this to Universal's Spider-Man. So Disney has to one up their game. So it's like, as you said, Vash, with consumer products and parks, why not fuse them and say, hey, let's create something that can alter a guest's experience on this attraction.
This is very interesting, and I think you and I, Vash, have touched upon this in private communications in regards to like the slippery slope, and where this can potentially lead. I'm concerned about that as well, but then also if it's done right, I think it can actually be a great benefit to the parks, and the way I think it'll be a great benefit to the parks, if done right, that's the big caveat, is much like, in the days when Walt Disney approached these companies to kind of sponsor attractions. So there would be a bigger budget to do a more incredible show or whatever, more better technology. I think this monetizing of attractions could potentially offer the same kind of value to attractions if corporate is getting money, like direct, upcharge money from these attractions, and they invest that into better technology, more immersive environments, things like that, then I'm all for it 100%. Then it's all good. But again, that's the caveat. Are they going to upcharge, but then still cheap out with the attractions? That's my big worry. But if it gets invested back into the attractions and we get something out of it, you know what? Go ahead. I'm cool with it.
Well, and that's just like with the new and upcoming Star Wars Star Cruiser. Right. You're paying a lengthy amount of money, to stay a couple nights in this, but that they're probably going to have something for guests to purchase that will benefit and alter their guest experience, like as far as like with lightsabers and technological stuff that's part of the Star Wars universe, because they already started that sort of with Galaxy's Edge, even though like with the lightsabers and the droids, it doesn't really connect with an attraction, but just within the land as a whole, it fits well to say, hey, you go into a workshop and you build your own droid, you build your own lightsaber. So they already kind of started that with Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the evolution of this we've already seen with Galaxy's Edge. There are experiences that people cannot see unless they pay the cost. It's kind of a paywall kind of system. So we've already kind of seen this in lands and with certain experiences. Obviously, consumer products and parks and resorts coming together. One of the big things was that you could have those kinds of experiences that simply weren't possible unless that relationship was closer. We had like 600 different merchandise items that were created for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, so that relationship improved that experience as well, and we're still seeing the fruits of that even come as soon as last week with the Darksaber and so forth. So I agree with you. I think it is benefiting the parks and the experiences, but this is kind of the first time where we've had like an attraction that everybody could ride, and some of that experience is held off for another purchase. I think what we're kind of all, you look at it and you go, in this particular instance, it's not so bad.
Right.
It just alters kind of the visual or audio cues and how you interact with the attraction. So it's not too terrible. I think what people are kind of afraid of is you get into the line of some attraction and you got a little prompt and it's like, hey, you want to see the audio animatronic at this other room here, you got to go ahead and pay that before you get into the ride vehicle. I think that's what we're all kind of afraid of for sure. And you can see where this kind of thinking can go. But if you can make the argument that if it enhances somebody's experience on the attraction and it doesn't hinder the attraction for everybody else, hey, maybe this is the way to go here.
But they would have to have some sort of, special effect that would allow guests to say, hey, here's $34.99, and then with additional costs of $29.99. So I'm for sure, to spend that amount of money, I would hope it would do something spectacular than just like add a little bit extra things. But I think personally for me, I would want to experience the attraction first before making that purchase, because it's one of those things where, is it really worth my time to make a purchase like that? If I like the attraction, but it's not something that I'd go on every single time when I go to DCA.
I kind of look at this, and this is going to be kind of an odd kind of comparison, but kind of hear me out on this one. I kind of compare this to like Star Wars and the auxiliary extra material that they release, like in the novels and the comics and things like that. And I'll give you an example. Rogue One came out in 2016, and like a casual fan that just watches the movies, you can go and pay for a movie ticket and watch Rogue One and understand the movie and get value out of that movie, right? But if you want to get a little more, let's say you want to learn a little bit more backstory about Jyn Erso and her father and what have you, you could have bought the Star Wars novel, the hardcover book, the Catalyst book, which kind of dives in and gives you a little more context. Now that's what books usually run, like $20-$25 maybe. So you're paying more, but you're getting probably more value though on top of your movie ticket, because you're gaining more context. I kind of see it like that, where you can go ride the ride, experience it for what it is. But if you want a little more, if you want to be able to customize and do a little more, then you got to pay a little more, just like the Star Wars book. It's kind of similar to, in my opinion, like that.
Well, and it's even like with Disney Plus right now, you pay a monthly price or a yearly price for the subscription. But with these new movies coming out, it's like, well, if you want to see them right now, you can go to theaters, or if you pay a little more, you can enjoy it, for the comfort right in your own home. So it's like, it's almost like it's an additional thing added to something that's already great. But I think as Disney fans, Disney knows that we're the type of people that will take a second look at it.
Right. Well, and this stuff, it'll either work or it won't. They try to do, like these extra things, like with, remember that glow with the show thing they try to do with
Oh my
color?
God. I was just about to say that. Oh.
Go ahead, Matt.
That one,
what are your thoughts?
that was interesting because Steve Davison had that idea. They put radio transmitters all around in various parts of the parks. Remember, like when you walked into Cars Land, it would change color. They did that everywhere. And the problem was that to really get the most out of it, everybody had to participate.
Exactly.
And they just set the price a little bit too high, and not everybody bought in. And as a result, it kind of died a dog's death because it was like, well, not everybody's doing it. You kind of have to have everybody on board. And so the best shows that we've ever seen with this technology are the ones where they gave them out essentially for pass holders at both World of Color and the Fantasmic shows that premiered. They're on YouTube somewhere. But
so does that mean, like in the future, like when they revamp Splash Mountain for Princess and the Frog, for an extra charge, they will charge you for these light up enemas, and then we just use them all, and then as we go through the ride, our butts light up like Ray.
Oh, there you go. Like the Firefly. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, some people have kind of equated this to like, well, if you want to get a better experience at the parks, you do have to pay a little bit more for like special treats, ice cream, special merchandise products, and so forth. And I can kind of see that argument. I will say, I mean, some people have made the comparison to microtransactions for video games. And yes, I kind of can see the comparisons there, especially for maybe the pay to play aspect of it, where you have multi-fire. It's like, okay, well, if you have a high score at the end, how does that work? But besides that, I will say at least you're getting a piece of hardware, right? Microtransactions in a video game, you get, kind of digital rewards, but they're stuck in the game.
Now, let me ask you guys
in this way, you get some hardware. Go ahead.
Let me ask you guys this. Now, with me not being a local, and even with you, Vash, we have to travel to Disneyland and everything. So does that mean after we make those purchases, every time that we would want to have that experience, we would then have to bring that with us every time we were to travel?
Yep. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Yes, from what I understand, that's what the idea is. The form factor is a little awkward. I'm just saying. I mean, I would have liked there have been like a slick model, because this thing kind of seems like a little bit of a contraption on your hands.
Well, especially getting through TSA, like the issues that they were having from Galaxy's Edge with the little the Coke and Sprite devices.
Well, exactly, right? So, that was a whole thing. That was funny. But somebody brought that up, like, wouldn't this be best for an annual pass holder type system where pass holders can actually, they can actually experience the variants, because it's like, hey, look, I'm paying by the month. Let me just dedicate a whole day and do this kind of thing. Without pass holders, at least not yet, and with the level of access that they previously had, I don't know if this completely makes sense to your point, George.
Right, exactly. And I'm very, very curious if this takes off. Are we going to see add-ons for like Midway Mania and stuff like that? I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, yeah, they would have to probably rent out the whole entire vehicle.
My brother has asked like multiple times, like, hey, I don't like pulling the thing. Can I just get like some kind of, traditional, handgun type setup and go through this kind of thing? I want like Bug Hunt or what is it? What's the Nintendo game? Duck Hunt. I want something like that. I don't want to, pull this thing on. But look, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were thinking about this kind of stuff for the e-ticket that was coming. Where you actually get to join the Avengers and fight alongside them. What if you actually got to choose your powers through this system? And if that's the case, oh man, I gotta buy them all.
Yeah, that's the same way too. It's like with that type of attraction that was such buildup, I don't know how well. Unless Disney was preparing that, because of the e-ticket, a lot of people weren't going to lean towards Webslingers, so they kind of had to have an extra incentive to say, hey, come check this out.
But to But to Orange Grove's point, I mean, if this is the kind of stuff they have to do to get something like that built, I mean, that's not such a bad thing there, because I mean, I'm sure they're going to be looking at the numbers from something like this and go, hey, look, if they're willing to pay extra for this attraction, how much more would they pay for, the balls to the walls type attraction, as we've said before.
Well, yeah, and if it does well, the possibilities are endless. I mean, every time the MCU releases a movie, let's say there's a new character down the line that has a cool weapon, you can add that weapon into this as an add-on. I mean, it's endless what they can do with this if it catches fire and people do it,
Oh yeah,
because especially with MCU of how all these lands are supposed to interconnect with one another, even overseas. So if they were to come up with something that ties into even, going to another Disney park internationally and use that type of system for a completely different attraction.
Right.
I mean, you could. There's conceivably no barrier to that. TSA and international flights providing. But they had ideas like this for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at one point. The idea was that you would use some type of glove, and that was like your kind of your shortcut into the Force, so to speak. And you were able, not unlike Universal's interactive wands, you were able to move objects within the land. You could imagine the X-Wings and A-Wings that are stationary there. What if you could actually put on this glove and actually, kind of lift them up, kind of thing? It's that kind of stuff. I don't know really what happened to that idea, but this is the next step in that kind of line of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, and the comparison, I've seen a lot of comparisons in regards to this idea with Spider-Man and what Universal does with Potter. I think both are really cool ideas. I think the Webslingers thing, though, has a more of a repeatability factor. Right. I think once you buy your wand and you kind of do the whole window shopping thing where the stuff pops up and moves, I don't know how many times people come back and keep doing that. I think with Webslingers being a game, I think there's much more repeatability there. But we'll see. It's pricey. I think it's more than the wand. So we'll see how many people actually do it in the first place,
Yeah, the wand's like $50, I think, and this is $64, initial kind of price, and you can go, man, it's like a 150 or something like that if you get all 4 flavors. I mean, this is up there. This is up there for sure. But look, we've seen kind of this stuff. Universal has the bands for Super Nintendo World that they've implemented in the I believe it's Universal Studios Osaka. Is that right? Universal Studios Japan. Yeah. Anyway, they've done it there. They will be bringing that technology conceivably to Hollywood when they open their Super Nintendo World. So this stuff is coming, folks. I mean, this is kind of the next step. And honestly, this is what some people kind of demand. They want more interactivity, more customization, and more kind of RPG elements and so forth.
Yeah. Now, I want to pivot just a little bit. We're still going to stay on the topic in general, but I want to pivot into your guys' overall feelings. And I'm glad you that was a great segue, Vash. Your overall feelings on, interactivity in the parks. And I'll start off on this and then I'll go to Vash. But I support interactivity, but I don't like when it's interactivity for interactivity's sake. And I'll give you a couple examples. The Millennium Falcon attraction in Galaxy's Edge. I think that's a good example of something that needed interactivity. And it's mostly because when you think of the Falcon, you think of the banter between Han and Leia and Luke. And, they're like talking shit to each other and like, come on, get him. Come on, kid. Don't get cocky, right? You kind of need that energy in any attraction you make for a Millennium Falcon ride. So interactivity, I feel, was really essential. Then there's other stuff that I feel is more like just for the sake of interactivity. It's kind of like in the queue area for like the Snow White mine train, the weird like diamond thing that you do in line. I think that's just kind of like filler stuff that we don't really need. So there's good examples and there's bad examples. Vash, what are your feeling on this whole trend of them pushing this interactivity in the parks? Do you like it? Are you kind of in the middle like I am? What are your feelings?
I think I'm in the middle. I think I'm in the middle. some like you said, some franchises, some IPs, some ideas lend themselves more to that idea. I mean, they wanted interactivity for like ever. I remember a concept like going back to the 70s and 80s where before Splash Mountain, there was an idea to like this is gonna sound insane. Imagine Splash Mountain log flume, but because it was in Critter Country and because it was next to the Country Bears, you were hunting down what is it, moonshine runners, and that were running moonshine in the kind of bear's habitat, and you were hunting them down with like rifles and stuff.
That was the real thing.
That was a real thing that they had considered at one point. It sounds insane, but
wow.
Look, I mean, we've had interactive stuff in the parks before. Look, the shooting gallery, right? I mean, this is kind of an idea that they've had for a while. It's just how do you implement it? How do you track that kind of stuff? And previously, technology was just didn't they didn't have it. I think some franchises, like you said, lend more to that. I think Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run is a great example. But I also think like the Avengers e-ticket, the way it sounded, it's like, oh yeah, that has to be interactive. You have to be in amongst the Avengers and fighting off bad guys and stuff. But like you said, I mean, I'm a passive attraction type person too, where the experience kind of happens to me and around me and doesn't necessarily require my direct interaction with it. So I think they're kind of like, you kind of have to weigh these things out for the type of experience you want to make. And I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Mr. Family Man, what are your thoughts on interactivity in the parks?
Yeah, I agree with it. I'm not opposed to it. I would prefer that if not every attraction has that ability to do so, because that's what separates each attraction, for that notion. So, I mean, if in Avengers Campus, if they have that for the Webslingers, that's what would make the Webslingers unique, and then you can go on just to say like Soarin' or Midway Mania, and they have their own abilities, as Vash had said, where it's within your surroundings and you don't need no add-ons or a purchase to experience that. But I'm in the middle with you guys. Like, it's like I don't oppose it, but I'm open-minded to the fact of technology's growing, and Disney has to stay ahead of the curve, and with competition with Universal and everything, to kind of it keeps them on their toes, and it even like in our everyday living, like when my wife and we just finished off paying for our iPhone 11s, and right as we were finishing paying them off, boom, here comes iPhone 12, and lo and behold, we have iPhone 12s now. So it's like, it's part of human nature. It's like we're our own worst enemies when it comes to that, because like when a new toy comes out, a new gadget, it's like, oh yeah, I like that. I have this, but I want to experience this. And I think, as we're loyal to Disney fans and they produce the product, we'll give it a go.
Consumer sentiment's also changing. People kind of have come to expect experiences like this now that we're in the video game industry. I mean, Joe Rohde used to talk about it. He used to talk about, hey, look, the original Disneyland, that was built by film guys, because film was a big thing back then, and they kind of took that mindset, that craft, and that way of narrative or storytelling into the parks with them. But now it's the video game generation,
right? And
you kind of have to think along that line of immersion and in some cases interactivity. The food, like when you're in like an RPG like Skyrim, for example. I mean, everything complements that story. Everything complements that level of immersion, and so people expect that in the parks, and that's why you're seeing Pym Test Kitchen, Docking Bay 7. That experience complements the overall experience. You're seeing the merchandise tie in, and how it's like, hey, look, this this toy looked like it was handmade, like somebody from Batu would sell you, and so it ties into that role playing and that immersion. And so this is kind of where we're going. I mean, we're not pulling back from this. We're going to go deeper into this.
And it's even like what we're doing now, podcasters, YouTubers, vloggers. Before growing up, you actually had to go to school with a degree to learn filmmaking. And now we have like all these tools that we pretty much just self-teach ourselves to do all these things.
Well, yeah. And George, that's a great, excellent point. Yeah. Before, television was a very, what's the word for it? um, you kind of watched it from the outside. You're an outside viewer of what's going on. You would watch like the morning show, like Today or Good Morning America or whatever. You would sit back and you would watch it, but there was no interactivity. Now, yeah, like you said, you watch your favorite YouTuber and they're live streaming, and you're part of that conversation. You're sending super chats, you're asking questions, you're commenting with other people watching the stream. Everything now, even content, is interactive. People expect, like Vash said, people expect that interactivity. It's no longer a passive experience with really anything that we consume anymore.
It is true.
It's
at some point with everything that Disney makes, there's some form of a new technological turn that sets it aside from, its past predecessors. I mean, look at even Pirates at Shanghai. The amount of detail and immersion and technology that's used in that. But then when you go back and look at the classic Pirates, it's like, whoa, that was like a big jump from Disneyland's to Shanghai.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild. And it's kind of also weird how things change, but then they also kind of just stay the same. Like when Walt Disney first opened Disneyland in 1955, everything was an upcharge. You had to pay to go on the Main Street vehicles, and we've kind of like almost like come full circle. Yeah. It's really kind of odd.
Yeah. And I know that you guys aren't too familiar with it, but it's even happening right now as we speak with the Disney cruise ships. The new Disney Wish is going to have its very first onboard attraction where it's no longer just a water coaster, but it's going to be an indoor-outdoor experience where they put you inside a Mickey Mouse cartoon while you're riding this water ride around the whole entire ship.
And just like coming around, they had an idea for a theme park on an oil rig. So it is kind of, we come full circle, so to speak. Yes. But I think you bring up a great point, George. I mean, the reason why they did the Pirates of the Caribbean that they did for Shanghai Disneyland is because that audience hadn't been predisposed to Disney like we have for, going on almost 100 years now. Right. And expectation level out there is much different here as a result. And I try to tell people all the time, hey, look, you might be nostalgic for the parks. You might really love the parks, but you have a generation who necessarily doesn't. And you have to capture those hearts and minds. And you kind of, to do that, you have to give them what they want. And in this case, they've done surveys, they've done tests, and they found that they want a hyper immersion, hyper level of interactivity and playmaking that previously was not existing in the parks.
Well, and that's one thing that I really want to give kudos to Bob Iger. And he had a way, and I've noticed this in the past 15 or so years he's been the CEO. He had a way of like recognizing that, what you just mentioned, Vash, where you can embrace the past, embrace the past, but also have a foot in the future and move forward and progress. So, he's embracing the franchise, an old franchise of Pirates of the Caribbean, but he's moving it forward. He's not stuck. He could have easily have just made a traditional Pirates of the Caribbean attraction and just made it like, cookie cutter, like all the other parks, but he didn't. He took the idea from the past, but he moved it into the future. And I like that about him. I like that approach. He's done that a lot with Disney, and I think that was really cool.
His big thing was never to be complacent. Never live on your laurels. You always got to be pushing forward, or else the future will leave you behind.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And that's sort of kind of like how we need to see what Chapek is going to do. Because as we were talking about before, it's like because of his cost cutting and everything, is he going to have that same mindset to even add in all this type of new technology? So only time will tell.
Chapek is a weird guy. And it's kind of frustrating me a little bit because I don't know what to make of him. And it's weird because like Vash has mentioned, I think in a video that we just made like a week ago, I think where he was saying he's not averse to spending, and he does spend money on the parks. But then there's this element of him, this aspect of him where he is cheap, like you mentioned, George. I can't make out what I'm torn on him. I don't know what kind of guy he is.
I think we'll get the full notion of who he is once Iger is like completely out of the picture, like when he is holding the full reins. And hope to God that while he's holding those reins, we're not taking a nosedive into the Pacific Ocean.
I think Chapek's thing, kind of thinking about it now, I think his thing is like, I don't mind spending upfront costs and upfront investment, but it's that kind of long-term investment that I might have an issue with. So it's like, oh yeah, I'll give you amazing worlds and creative lands and amazing attractions and so forth, but the Westworld type element of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, it's going to be an ongoing thing, maybe not going to do. And that's, that has its pluses and its minuses, as we've seen. That might be one of the reasons why the barges at Epcot, for example, they don't move back and forth because of the amount of technicians and stuff they would have to do to make that happen.
I was also following a conversation that Orange Grove, you were having, I believe it was on Twitter, about how Universal kind of has that upper hand with not releasing too much information until it's almost ready to be opened, rather than give an initial concept art and everyone saying, oh, okay, well, this is what it's exactly going to be, And I think someone on your thread that wrote that, a concept art is not a blueprint, right. It's just an overall assumption of what they would like to do, but not necessarily what they're going to do. Just like with Disneyland Forward, we see that concept art that may not necessarily be what it's going to look like in the future, but it's an idea.
Right. Yeah. And I think in this new day and age, we live in a different world. Like when I was growing up, I was a nerd. I loved Disney. I was a huge Disney nerd. And I was so excited for Indiana Jones Adventure to open in 1995.
I'm sorry. I just have to correct you on that. You're an orange nerd.
Yes, orange nerd.
Nice.
But I was so excited and pumped for Indiana Jones Adventure to open in 1995. But see, I didn't have access in the mid 90s to the constant flow of information, not only through social media, but even through things like the D23 Expo. So when I finally experienced the ride, I experienced it completely naive and fresh. It was I was just completely new to it. Now, kids don't have that same experience because they're seeing concept art and they're seeing leaks on social media and things like that. They know the entire attraction before they even ride it. And there's expectations attached to that. It's different. It's much, much different.
Great point. Expectations. I mean, we kind of knew Rise, the whole layout before the thing even open. It's crazy, like you said, Indiana Jones open. I didn't know what to expect on the other end, and that anticipation was frothing at the mouth just trying to get on that thing. So I think it does have to do with a little bit with expectations. I do appreciate Universal's approach in that. I think it's really frustrating though, when it's like, what big building? What are you talking about? There's no construction here. What that's all in your head. It's like, I know what that is, man. But it's frustrating on that end. And I do think some of that anticipation is good, gets vacation book packages built, and it builds up hype for sure. But that level of expectation is extremely high. And when you don't necessarily reach it, that, bad things can happen.
Yeah, it's like it's like D23. Chapek got on stage.
Oh man!
And he had the huge concept art behind him of this Bantha attraction at Galaxy's Edge, and then it never happened. It's like, why would you get everyone excited for the Bantha ride and then not do it? Like,
but remember, he did keep his word on target.
He got the target thing. That's for sure. Done. The priorities, there you go. No, that was a big misstep.
It was.
But wrapping it all back to it still kills me. It still kills me. I could never forgive him for that. But bring it all back to immersion, like within the lands and immersive elements within the parks. I think a lot of people have kind of this idea that it's like, wow, you're getting a different experience if you pay for this on an attraction. We've never seen that before. We never saw interactive ones before. We never saw a lot of these interactive elements before until they did happen. And that consumer sentiment, that consumer expectation has to be set somewhere. And this is where they're setting it. So when this happens again with something else, they won't get that reaction because people kind of expect that going into it on some level.
Right. And one of my big concerns, to close out the conversation, one of my big concerns, I'm gonna go to both of you on this one because this is kind of interesting.
Sure.
Disney has a history of implementing interactivity, right? The interactivity will work for a little bit and then it'll break and then they never go back to it. Like Toontown is full of these examples. All the push and pull stuff, and then they break and they just say, you know what, screw it, and it never works again. That's a big concern too. Whenever I hear Disney or WDI announcing anything interactive in a land or whatever, I'm like, it's like the Pandora. I mean, from my friends in Florida are telling me like a lot of the interactive stuff in that land hasn't worked since it opened. It's like, why do they do this? Vash, what are your thoughts on that? Are you frustrated too?
You have to look, if you're gonna do it, you got to commit to the quality. You have to commit to what you actually put out there. You have to, look. Sometimes they do this really well, like Disney California Adventure, for example. One of the reasons why it was built the way it was because, look, if a light fixture breaks, not a huge issue to replace it because it's not a custom fixture. They probably selected out of some catalog and away you go. A lot of the stuff that they built in Buena Vista Street and Cars Land are custom. They're custom to that land. They're custom for that area. So when a light fixture breaks, it's like, oh, we have to go back and we have to maintain it and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with interactivity in some cases. Now, they've been getting a little bit better. I think the data pad, I don't think any of those things are going to break, although they don't work maybe as well as they did, back in the day and so forth. It is extremely frustrating, though, when you have experiences, immersive elements or something like that, and they just fail. How often do we go through some like Indiana Jones Adventure, and you pull in the pole and it's like nothing happens? Like, oh, come on, really? Like
I'm in a line with people. I'm in a line with like friends or family that's never been on this attraction, and we go through that one little hallway, and I'm like, I'm gonna pull the bamboo pole. I'm gonna scare the hell out of them. This is gonna be so cool. You pull it like an idiot. It doesn't do anything.
I'm left holding the bag, Mickey. Come on, man. Give me something.
Work with me here.
Oh, yeah, but consumer expectation that can work for and against you. Go ahead, George.
Mr. Family Man.
Well, and I think also too, this is why Disney is also taking this approach, because I think now, especially with COVID and everything, they don't want a whole lot of things where people are a lot of like touchy-feely sort of thing. So, I mean, now they're saying, hey, for a price, buy something, you could own it, and you can make something interact with you along the park. It's how they started with the Play app, where you can make certain things in the queue activate with your phone. And so I think, but I mean, it is frustrating to what's already there, because to me, it's still nostalgia, to its finest, so it's like, they prep and prepare you of saying, this immersive land, this interacts with this and this goes with that. And you're staring at it, like waiting for something to happen. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of shot. Especially the Yeti in Expedition Ever. So I know that there's like a story behind that, but I mean, like, this guy has had carpal tunnel for over 15 years. So it's like, he needs to kind of get motivated again. Yeah, he needs like a Richard Simmons tape, like get him moving or something.
Yeah, he's been down for the count for a long time. But thank you, fellas, for coming on. I really, really do appreciate it. I'm gonna start with you, Mr. Vaskai. Where can everybody find you at home on social media?
Best place to interact with me is at Vaskai on Twitter, right down there. But you can see me on Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for fresh and juicy content squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that's where you can find me. Like I said, new video. It is coming, folks. I swear, it is coming. It's just it's taking a little while.
Perfect. And
it's all that technology. You're building it up. It's going to be like this one big kablam.
Yes, exactly.
So, again, I'm a Disney Family Man. You can find me on Twitter at Disney George, and you could also find me on Instagram. Not so much activity right now, but once I go on my 2-week vacation to Walt Disney World, folks, I promise you there's going to be a lot on Instagram. And Disney Family Man 23 is my YouTube channel, and you could also find me on the Grand Circle Tour podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.
Perfect. Thank you, fellas. And thank you all for watching. Comment below with any opinions or thoughts you have on the Webslingers Upcharge or the interactivity in the parks. We would love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.